here.
Guys, welcome back to another week of our talks with Dr. Ellen Ron, and today we get to talk to you about heat stroke and different types of animals, including dogs, cats, chickens, goats, horses.
Yep.
We've got a couple fun surprises for you along with this one.
Here.
In fact,
Take a seat.
here goes one of them.
Would you and Mama like to sit here?
Oh, thank you.
There you go. Right there.
Wait till you see what we've got in store for you today.
All right. So, hi guys. This is Amaris.
Hi.
Pronounce your last name.
Saldate.
See, I never say it correctly.
It's a
got
rough one.
wrong accent and wrong syllable. I always screw that up, so I apologize. And this is Jemima.
Yes.
And so Jemima is new to Bark Avenue and the Chicken and Organic Egg Project, and she's extremely friendly chicken, and she, along with our heat stroke project today, she fits all of our parameters, right? First of all, she's black. Second of all, she's heavy. Third of all, she is in an environment where, depending on husbandry, which Amaris is in control of course, is that we need to make sure that these guys are not in direct heat. They have a way to get away from it. They have a way to get plenty of access to water, and we'll go through that with the different types of animals in today's show. But I'm going to release the mic to Amaris here to talk to us about things that personally I know very little about. I have chickens, but Amaris has been doing this for what, 13 years?
13 years.
Yeah. So Amaris and Jemima take the show with regard to heat stroke issues for our farm.
Yes. Goats, horses, pigs, chickens. Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa. I've been doing this a long time. I am by no means saying I'm an expert. As with everything, everybody has more to learn. But we are going to start off with the chickens. Here at Bark Avenue, we have a beautiful facility. The staff here has made us a wonderful setup. We have misters, we have baby pools, we have water, shades, a turnout, everything that these little girls need to be happy and productive. So the biggest thing we worry about is there's a huge rush right now of people worrying about egg production and chickens. So chickens are flying off the shelves, which is good because that means that people are getting into it because they love them. But we just want to make sure that we're doing our best to take good care of them. Chickens need to have plenty of shade. They need to have constant airflow. So you can do things like put in fans, you can put in misters. The one thing that we want to watch out for is a swamp cooler. That cold air mixed with the warm air is the perfect combination to give them little chicken pneumonia or little chicken URIs, which isn't fun and they don't feel good. So we just want to make sure they have plenty of access to water, a low salt, low sugar diet. So we're going to want to make sure we do a lot of whole grains, sprouting grains, things like that. We're going to want to avoid feeding them corn. Corn makes them super hot. So if you have chickens that are on corn, if we could try to do that in the evening, that would be a little bit better, keeping them cool and helping them regulate their body temperature. Hot foods like corn, the corns, the darker leafy green vegetables, things like that, strawberries. As they process them, their little bodies make them hotter. So we're going to want to hold off on that. Some great ideas to keep them cool and comfortable. There's a few different treats. I know we said low sugars, so we can do stuff like mixing bananas, mixing that with some dried oatmeal and maybe watermelon rinds with chickens.
What about blueberries?
Blueberries are good. They're really fun if you freeze them because they can't eat them whole, so you don't worry about them swallowing it. And they love them. They go crazy for blueberries. I really like to put them in ice cubes. I make little like ice cube medleys for their waters.
That's fun, right?
It is so much fun. Make sure they have plenty of fresh, clean drinking water, as well as, oh, there you go. Oh, okay, call me a liar. She swallowed it. She's a big girl.
Here's a littler one.
Yep.
Sorry, Jemima.
Jemima is just quite the piggy today. So we want to make sure we're doing things like electrolytes to help keep them healthy. You can do a little bit of oregano. And with the oregano, we can just do the regular leafed oregano from the store, and you can add that into their feed, and that'll kind of help regulate some stuff too. Watermelon rinds are great. Melons are great in moderation. We want to avoid the peppers, the citruses, and the onions.
So what Amaris is saying about the foods that are good for Jemima is also 100% accurate for our dogs, and depending on how favorably your cats look at alternative food, doing the melons, doing the blueberries, doing I've got this whole entourage of food, which I'm so happy to hear. Jemima. The melons, if you talk about seasonal foods for humans, stuff that's on the shelf, stuff that is, of course, with us here, we're all organic. Did you want some of this? Oh my gosh. But as Amara said, in moderation, because if you feed your dog massive amounts of cool melons, including watermelon, you're looking for about 24-hour later run of diarrhea because their body's not used to it. It's more cool than traditional foods. But for Jemima and for other animals that many of us, other than Amaris and people that know what they're doing, we have to be careful about food changes that are too rapid. We want to be careful about. You got her? She's like, can't believe you put that in front of me and you're not letting me have any of it. What are signs of heat stroke in your chickens?
Definitely. So we're going to look for their crop and wattle, which is the crop is this pretty little red thing on top of her little head and her little wattles. They're going to be it's called crestfallen, where they just kind of slump over. It's going to be dry. It's going to be pale. It's going to be really tacky. Her eyes are going to be closed. She's going to be lethargic. Diarrhea is a big sign.
How do you tell if a chicken has diarrhea? This is coming from a non-chicken person, so I have no idea.
That's a valid question. It's a valid question.
So chickens usually have kind of a great firm stool, and please forgive me for being so terrible. A chicken stool, normal chicken stool is going to be like soft serve ice cream or pudding. Diarrhea is going to be
water.
Yes.
Okay.
Sometimes it can be a little like Play-Doh. We watch out for that too if they are when they get a little too dehydrated, either it's diarrhea or constipation, just kind of like with people. And with chickens, the biggest thing we want to watch out for is their outside animals. So they're outside all day, every day. So we just want to make sure that we're keeping them cool because, it's nice, it's nighttime, they cool down. They really don't get that cool down period because they don't leave outside.
I also had a problem when I worked in Vegas for a long time, and we had heat stroke issues in Vegas that everyone here has and is going to have. Is the this sounds crazy, but the rotation of the sun. So in the morning we think we have these guys. Okay. You just done with it?
Yep. She's like, I need more.
Okay, here you go. Sorry. So in the morning we think that we have these animals, whether it's dog, cat, horse, chicken, anywhere. We think that they're in the shade, and as the sun turns during the day, as it just did on Ron and I before we started this, it changes everything with regard to the sun, direct penetration on these guys, and inability to get into shade even though they want to. These are things that are extremely important in all species, especially, and if you were laying out in the sun and it changed in the middle of a 108-degree day here in Mesa or Phoenix, Arizona, you would get up and move in the shade. If you could, you know that we would pay the price, and these guys do as well. How does she vendor? That's not a little piece of chicken.
She knows. She's like, I need more snacks.
Hold on. But so how does she ventilate? If she's hot, she pants. She'll have the mouth breathe,
yeah,
right?
she'll pant. She'll move her little wings away from her body. You can see where the feathers will kind of open up a little bit. This beautiful little cooling system. They will hang out in their water dishes. They will dig and dig and dig.
And get deeper like dogs do.
Yes. So nice little dust baths. So we just want to make sure we provide them. If they are in a coop, and I understand everybody loves wood shavings, but they make them hot. Wood shavings, it retains heat, so it makes them super warm. So we can do shavings in nesting boxes, but just make sure that we have enough dirt so that they can dig up, scratch and peck, get that nice cool dirt in so they can get it in their little chicky pores and cool off some. And that's kind of goes the same with the horses, the goats, and the pigs too. They need that dirt, even though the sun bakes on the earth, they dig the dirt in, and that's what helps cool them off because they get that dirt all over their bodies. Kind of like if you ever see the elephants in the savannah just flinging dirt all over themselves.
Well, and also our dogs, not cats so much, but our dogs dig holes to get deeper in the earth to get cooler, and they kind of put their abdomen on. Now, what you described with her, with kind of a pale area on her top and bottom and dry, this is what we do for dogs and cats as well, right? So we do it on the gums instead to see how pink they are, the refill. I'm not sure these guys refill, or they don't want their comb pinched, right?
They do.
But being dry and being pale and those types of things, being clinical signs, super important dehydration, right?
Yes.
And then what do you do to try and rehydrate these guys just in case you come home and you have one of your chickens that is showing clinical signs?
Definitely. And then can we just touch one more thing I forgot?
Yes,
And
please.
so, right,
Yes, please.
their
No.
crop is this beautiful little pouch over here on the right-hand side that will, if they get dehydrated, that crop, or they get too hot, that crop will not evacuate. So they eat, the food goes in from the mouth to the crop, hangs out, goes down the little gullet, munch, munch, munch in their little bellies, and then it's processed out. So that's another thing we look for, and then also being egg down where they don't grow as much because they just don't have the water. So what we try to do is with any animal when there is signs of heat stroke or dehydration, we just want to make sure we're cooling them off, but we're doing it safely. So we're not going to take her and just dump her in a nice cold thing of water. That'll put her into shock and that can give her a little heart attack.
Yep.
So we are going to start with her little feet down here. So you're going to get the little feeties wet and then kind of gradually work into her little abdomen.
And then we want to do wet with water, correct?
Yes, wet with water, and you can just run a cool hose. Try not to put ice in it because it'll put her into shock. You cannot eat that, my friend.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, there is a fly buzzing around and she's trying to get it.
Here, eat a blueberry
there,
instead of
blueberries instead.
So we're having a full-on conversation with
Yeah.
a chicken about, okay, hold on with the fly. I know you
Yeah.
want protein, but
Oh, you should see it when I go feed them. It's terrible. They're my
oh, I
buddies.
see it. I see it. Yeah.
So we just want to make sure that we are starting to cool her off with her little feet first. You can give her some cooler water. You can do, what I like to do is I get water bottles and I freeze them and I put them in the nesting boxes. That way there is shavings in the box, so that'll help insulate it. Or I will freeze a wet towel and I'll put it out there and they can lay on it. If we're going to cool them off, we just want to make sure they have a way to get away from it. That way if their temperature drops too much, they have
They
other
can move,
options.
yeah.
Yeah. And the biggest thing is too, with chickens are really hard because once they get too hot, they stay too hot. So the idea is to just prevent it. I know it's difficult to say in Arizona when it gets to 120, but the biggest thing is just making sure we have more options. We have more misters and fans and plenty of water and pools that they have access to so they can just kind of prevent this. Because it's easier to prevent heat stroke than it is to treat heat stroke in animals like this.
Well, that's true for our mammals too, and our dog and cat patients.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about that and the idea that in our dog population, we now still globally have a 50% mortality rate with heat stroke. And we think about what you just talked about with when she starts to get hot, she's not able to cool herself off. That's a loss of autoregulation, and that happens in dogs as well. As soon as they cross the brink where their body stops trying to save itself from this ventilation and evaporation and those types of things, and the heart, instead of beating really fast, ends up slowing down. The spleen has a mechanism in that turns out to be quite detrimental. But as soon as we lose autoregulation, but it's so much easier to, in theory, avoid it and to take cooling measures like the misters that you have and the pools that you have and the fans you have. Isn't she funny? She's it's just live right there.
Yeah.
So, do you have any recommendations for the folks that are watching that are considering getting chickens in the middle of the summer, which I'm not sure they're available too much right now?
Yeah, there are not a lot available right now, unfortunately, but that's okay. If you want to get them, we definitely want to look for getting them in the fall. If you're going to introduce them into your coop, into your runs, we like to do that in the evenings. They're a lot more docile in the evenings, but the biggest thing is if you are going to get some, we need to make sure that we are making sure that we have food, water, shade, and shelter. The biggest thing is making sure that they have a shade that no matter where the sun goes, it's going to beat down on them. They're going to have enough ways to get out of it. We want to make sure they have enough water, electrolytes, and a good stable food to keep them healthy. So if you have any questions, we would love to help you out. We are not experts, but we will definitely do our best to guide you. We just want to make sure we're making the best decision for the animals. That's making sure they have a place where they have plenty of room to run, get out of the sun, and plenty of water, fresh
free range.
fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, cooling fruits and cooling vegetables. Mealworms are a great way to have protein that keep them cool. So mealworms, scratch grains are great. I don't have anything. Scratch grains are great. Layer feed is great. If you are going to feed layer feed, the crumbles is the best bet to go in the summertime because the pellets are just too hard to digest sometimes.
Especially if they're on the verge of dehydration. Difficult process.
Plug them up.
No plugging up, Jemima.
Yeah, there's nothing.
Jemima, you were a very, very good guest star. You were.
Thank you, Jemima.
And sorry you didn't get that fly or whatever it was that was scooping her up.
I know, she's looking
She's
at
so
that
serious
down
that
there.
she goes, I can still see it even though you people can't.
Yeah, she is. And then when we have our horses and our goats and our pigs, we want to make sure we're kind of doing the same thing. We're giving them a lot of fresh water. If we are doing electrolytes, you need to make sure they have 2 options for water. Some won't drink electrolytes. They don't like the taste. They don't like the smell. So you're going to have 1 bucket for electrolytes, 1 bucket for water. The rule with for animals, as small animals, I believe it's 1 ounce per pound.
That's exactly right.
For
You're
large
exactly right.
animals, we're doing 1 gallon per pound, which I know is difficult with horses because they have 100-gallon tanks. 100-gallon tank filled twice a day will be just fine. We just have to make sure that
That is an immense water obligation, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
Jemima, you know what? I gotta be honest with you.
She wants to kill that fly.
There's a fly on your watermelon too.
Oh, is there? Okay. So we just want to make sure we have a lot of water and a lot of shade, and if we are going to go riding, if we are going to work them, that we are working them at a time of day where they are going to have enough time to cool off after. I know it's wonderful to be like, let's go on an early morning ride, but if you're going to be riding at 7, it's going to get brutally hot at 9, we're going to want to try to avoid that. A horse's perception of heat it varies, but it's generally 10 to 25 degrees warmer than ours, as well as for goats and pigs. They don't stand a chance, those poor things. They're nothing but skin. So they don't really have a good way to ventilate themselves either. So just make sure if we are going riding, we are going walking, we're doing it at a time where, since they are outside animals, they have enough time to cool off, to be comfortable after. Because it's kind of rotten to do a workout in the middle of the morning and then stay outside all day and do your yard work or lounge around.
You feel sick.
Yeah.
You feel sick and dehydrated and headaches and those types of things. So these guys not so much different. Now what do we do? You know, horses sweat.
Yep.
She's gonna pant.
Yes.
What do your goats and your pigs do?
So pigs will sweat and pant. Goats are a little difficult. There are some breeds that will sweat. There are some breeds that just can't. So they might be panting. Goats are they're big babies, so they might be screaming. They might be running around. But goats, they can sweat. They don't sweat as much as other animals, so they will pant. And they will try to find somewhere place to lay down that's cool. What I like doing for the goats and the pigs is, it's not, I know a lot of people don't think it's ideal, but I like getting the terracotta pavers, those big square, I think they're 12 by 12 or 12 by 18. They have them at the Home Depot. They're $2 each. I get some of those, I lay them out in a shady place in the stall. That way it gets nice and cool. You can wet it off.
Let it down.
And they will lay on that all day.
Interesting.
Yeah, or those big rubber buckets. The goats and the pigs like to lay in that too. I don't know why, but if you have one and they like to lay in it, just make sure that it's in the shade and it's somewhere where they can get out of the sun. I know.
She's so funny because she's like staring me down. She goes, I know that you have more. Huh.
Well, she had a bunch of snacks this morning too. But
Well, the Bark Avenue chickens, they've got misters and they've got fans, and they are in a shaded environment. And then, like you said, the fencing just went up, and the free range area is getting ready to go. So it's beautiful.
Play pools.
yes, they have pools, they have perches, we have tire swings. They have a chicken paradise, which is great because all these chickens are rescues. So it has been an amazing journey to go to these terrible situations where they're in these production facilities where it's 12 inches by 12-inch cage to come here, and these chickens haven't been outside. So as they're outside, it's been really amazing to watch them figure it out and learn and play. Are you gonna help her? She's barking stuff. Do you hear her?
She's like, what is going on?
Yeah.
I know I heard you.
She's a big girl.
It's funny when they growl like that, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But no, it's been really amazing to have such a wonderful environment for these chickens who were,
Didn't have it.
yeah, they were honestly in a terrible living situation, and now they have such a great life.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jemima. You did a great job. Yes. She got a little bit of fruit, almost had a fly. It's nice to know. So I can tell you from my past, I've had chickens in the past. I get really emotionally attached to my chickens. I mean, really emotionally attached to them. You know, like this chicken, letting you pet her and having the human-animal bond with these guys and making sure that they don't get hurt or they don't get sick. And, when we're in the dog and cat world, we're always talking about how cats are so hard to read because they hide all the time. Try to read these guys. Unless you have an emotional relationship with them or you know them personally, it's, some people say that chickens are stupid, some people say that chickens are just chickens. That is 100% inaccurate, because I gotta be honest with you, if we were all as kind as chickens are to each other and to themselves, things would be so much better off, in my personal opinion. And the idea of having a chicken as a buddy, you know what? I'm getting nothing against it, except for that whole finger pecking thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She gets hand fed, so they all get spoiled
Yeah.
and hand fed exposed.
Well, plus I'm I'm not paying attention because I'm wearing rings and shiny things in front of a chicken, so I'm asking for it, I'm just asking for it. So that's okay, Joanna. You did a good job today, huh?
She does.
You did a good job. So it sounds like the information and the welfare of our chicken friends and livestock friends is much akin to what we need to do with our dog and cat friends with regard to welfare and housing and shade and access to water, which you're exactly right, the 1 ounce per pound of dog and cat and people as well. But as soon as we get into hot environments or exercise environments or excitement environments, those types of things, that requirement goes up and sometimes doubles depending on the size of the dog. I see you.
She's looking, she's trying to get that
Trying to get
bite.
is that my jacket?
Yeah.
Yep.
Isn't this funny? It's like a Stephen King movie because this chicken just going slow. Jemima's like,
It flew away. Oh, Jay.
whose show is this, Jemima, huh? So I wanted to talk about dogs and cats today in addition to Jemima, and make sure that we understand that the holistic piece of this, I've written books, I do lectures on this quite often, and the piece of how is it that we sustain.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, Jemima. Bye, Mars. Thank you so much. And don't let Daphne bother you, Jemima.
Oh, we're gonna have a good day.
She's under my feet.
Oh, she? I was gonna say Jemima could probably take Daphne in a fair fight. So I wanted to have a conversation about the physiology of heat stroke because, as we mentioned before with Jemima, hi Jemima, hi Mars. I'd say goodbye to Jemima the chicken first. I'm sorry. Bye Mars. The physiology of heat stroke is extremely important to know. It's not just about how do we slow it down, how do we use homeopathics, how do we do acupressure points to decrease body temperatures, all of which we're going to talk about here. And I like I said before, I read a little book, a bigger book actually, about these issues, how people can help their animals on the way to the veterinary hospital. The key to that is on the way to the veterinary hospital. At the end of our lecture, we'll be talking about the fact that, as Amaris mentioned with Jemima and all chickens, that as soon as the body, in an effort to save itself, loses autoregulation, meaning that all of its efforts to cool itself, regardless of what kind of creature you are, as soon as it bypasses a certain point physiologically, that you end up with biochemical abnormalities, you end up with all kinds of they're not contraindicated life-saving measures, but it's exquisitely hard to reverse dogs and cats that pass a certain point in heat stroke, and we're going to talk about that. It's going to be very scientific. We will talk about some of the issues with regard to maintenance and all of the other holistic components we talked about. I don't think that owners and some veterinarians have enough respect for heat stroke and how it comes on, how we handle it, and how well we have to go after it, and understand that regardless of what point in a heat stroke complex that a dog or cat has, that the idea of getting control of it, the idea of managing it, and the idea of knowing what's going to happen 48 hours later, we do not know. So to be have access to information on, much like we talked about rattlesnakes, your emergency hospital, I would do poison control. I'd have all the phone numbers to talk to people to guide you through what's going to happen between the period of time where your dog or cat starts to show signs of heat stroke. Now,
so there's levels right before you get to heat stroke, right? So you have I'm hot to heat exhaustion to then heat stroke, right? And so there's probably signs that we can let everyone know when you're in what level, and so that we can maybe foresee heat stroke, so we don't have to get quite to that point.
100%, right? And the thing is, there's certain breeds of animals, certain sizes, certain characteristics, and I historically remember when I'm doing these lectures and I go whizzing down the track of what I want people to know, I forget the fundamentals. So here we go. Everybody who owns a dog or cat should have a thermometer. Everybody. Thermometer and some lube. And we want to make sure it's KY jelly and not a not a lubricating product that's made out of what are other kinds of products that we can't rinse off? Vaseline. They're more petroleum products, not helpful, and sometimes the petroleum products actually block the contact of the animal with the thermometer and they throw things up. And so that can negate our thermometer temperatures. Now, that being said, the normal temperature for dog and cat is what? 105, give or take a degree, okay? So 100 to 103 degrees is normal for a dog or cat, and as soon as you start creeping up past 103 degrees in a dog or a cat, we are in trouble, okay? How did they get there? Do they have a virus? Is it heat stroke? And all the components that you were just talking about. You really start to get in trouble. How are we going to cool them down? Those types of things.
And as much as we always hate to take a temperature here when we do a physical exam, it's really important. Not only do we want to know the temperature that day of the exam, but like what's the trend of the dog's temperature, the cat's temperature the entire time it's ever been with us. And so a dog or cat that's always had 100.5 and all of a sudden has 5, even though that's quote unquote in normal range, that's something to look into when we're doing our exams. So knowing or even asking your veterinarian what your dog's temperature or cat's temperature normally runs is really helpful to know, so that when you are taking a temperature in these situations, you know what is kind of normal versus what could be creeping up.
It's true. It's absolutely true. And that we do the same thing in the hospital here, but usually we try to do it under controlled circumstances. To be frank with you, now with COVID and now with the separation of our pets from our owners and the amount of anxiety and stress that causes in what has it been 103 degrees out here in parking lots and those types of things, it's not helpful with regard to trying to take temperatures, because we have stress temperatures, we have heat temperatures, we have anxiety temperatures, those types of things. But with regard to heat stroke, I wanted to touch base on some articles that will be posted on our website that come straight from the National Institute for Health. They come from the National Library of Medicine, the National Center for Biotech Information. These are research studies from around the world about heat stroke in dogs primarily, and they correlate it and extrapolate it to humans and from humans. And the 50% fatality number is real. It's real across globally. So when people think it's not that big of a deal, it is a big deal. And it's a big deal not today, but tomorrow and the next day. Talked about the fact that the dogs, they don't sweat, okay? And with Dr. Google and all these other resources that are going on, people sometimes are misinformed. Dogs release their body heat by convection, like convection ovens, and also panting to relieve heat. We also see those wet footprints on the ground. Some people think their dogs are sweating. They're not. It's convection of heat into an environment that dissipates the humidity. Now, the trick is that when we start to get hot, that meaning dogs, we're going to be dogs together here today, the heart rate goes up. In order to get oxygen moving around the body, the spleen squeezes to get more red blood cells moving around the body. Red blood cells carry oxygen. In order to get the oxygen to get to the surface of the body, the heart, like I said, speeds up. Our heart rate goes up. The red blood cells go to the surface of our body, and what we're trying to do is dissipate heat out of the dog's body through the skin. It's not sweating, it's dissipation of heat through the capillaries and the tips of the ears and the tips of the nails. And then we get these red gums, and we get this really rapid refill time on the gums. And as the temperature of the dog moves towards the temperature of the environment, the idea of heat dissipation becomes less functional. Because if I'm 105 degrees and it's 105 degrees outside, the idea I'm going to dissipate heat is impossible. I'm not going to be moving heat out of a 105 degree body into a 105 degree environment. So it becomes less functional. And areas of humidity, the body wants to, especially in dogs, it wants to take the moisture of the gums and the mucous membranes of the nose and use that moisture to be able to dissipate the heat of the body. But the moisture of the nose and the moisture of the gums is essential for getting rid of that body heat.
Like a natural swamp cooler.
It's a natural swamp cooler. No, but I mean it is. And that's the kind of stuff that we're going to be using externally to get the same function. The thing is, the dog gets dehydrated. The environment humidity gets high on some of these, what do they call monsoon days?
Mm-hmm.
If the environment has the same humidity, God forbid it's up to above 30% or 80% is where we get critical. If the body's using humidity and moisture to dissipate the heat of the organ, whether it's a dog or a cat, and external humidity matches that, our ability to decrease our heat in our body becomes negated. So this happens in Arizona all the time, whether we have a hot, dry day and it becomes 105. And our dogs, as soon as we become 105.7, we become critical. And that's the point of no return. That's when you get, like you were saying, the actual definition of heat stroke. It's critical at 105.7. And take it seriously a heck of a lot earlier than that. But when the body gets to that point and it's starting to change the physiology of the body, the way the blood works, the way we try to ventilate, the way we're trying to move blood, we're going to squeeze our spleen to get more red blood cells. The dog is panting. It may be anxious. It may be glazed. The eyes may be glazed. We might have started vomiting. We might have started getting signs of depression because we're in trouble. Yes, regardless of the resources that we have for dogs and cats, putting a fan in front of them. Some people like to try to put ice in their water. Don't do that. It's too cold in a too hot environment. It will cause these guys to try and go into shock.
Yeah, just like Amara said with the chickens and the goats and the horses, we don't want to shock these guys back into cold. Because what your body actually does, it starts to shiver, and shiver actually increases your body heat again.
That's
and
right.
So now you think you're cooling down, and you're actually heating the body up because it's shivering.
Which is exactly right. The thermoregulation effects are exact opposite, right? And then at 105.7, you start to have central nervous dysfunction in the entire body. Sorry, I treat a lot of cases like this, and it's a horrible situation. I apologize. And that losing the nervous system ability to control your body at these high rates, and all the things that we think we're doing on the external control, it's nice. I mean, we love our animals and we want to try to help them. I got to be honest with you. Get on the phone with the emergency hospital. Get them in the car with the air conditioner blaring, and well, not at them, but get a cooling environment. And we'll talk about that later, and we can post all the references on our website. But the most important thing is 105 degrees, 105.7, when we lose auto-regulation. The dog's not panting as much as it was before. The heart rate is going down, not up. The spleen has stopped contracting to some degree. You end up with this, the severity of immediate onset inflammation in the entire body goes rampant instantly. And the toxic byproducts of that are running through the body as well. And we end up with liver failure, kidney failure. We end up with some neurological issues, these seizures, which you're talking about with regard to trembling. If you have a seizure event with a bad heat stroke case, the motion of the muscle tissue and the pure brutality of that increases the body temperature remarkably, and you end up with rhabdomyolysis like you do with Monday morning racehorses, things like that, which is a completely horrible bleeding contraction disease. And the secondary issues with this, they don't stop. The body is trying to self-regulate, and the body becomes acidotic or alkalotic, and the kidneys aren't working very well anymore, and you move towards two fatal conditions. You're already there, called DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation or coagulopathy, and that's when the body malfunctions to the point where you're clotting and you're bleeding out at the exact same time. In an effort to rescue the body from heat stroke, which can happen 48 hours after an owner thinks that you have a heat problem, you can go into these fatal, irreversible conditions. And if you're a veterinarian or you're an owner, or if you're somebody that's tried to help a dog that's done this, all the things we think we know, all the ways we think we can cool these guys down, all the blood transfusions, all the antibiotics, all the anti-clotting fixtures, it's a mess. And I'll be frank, because are you going to stop the clotting or are you going to stop the bleeding? These are decisions you have to make, and trying to cool these animals down at the speed at which you want to cool them down, and you are stopping a physiological process that has been sent well on its way because of the loss of our ability to self-regulate, to basically survive. And the different kinds of animals, that the models of our animals that are more susceptible to these are important to know. We're going to go through that and the reasons why we're going to go through it. Because so many people own these animals because they think they're cute. And we also have a tendency to be fat. If you ever travel to a foreign country, I traveled to Thailand and Australia and some other places, you can walk through the streets or walk through the airport and you can point out Americans at first sight because we're chubby. I mean, it's a group of people, and it's just me talking. I apologize, but as a group, we're chubby. We're not lean. We're not ventilating. We're not doing. I mean, you can walk out of an airport and like, ew, American. You know, and I love my country. Don't get me wrong. That's not. It's just that we are just a chubby group of people, and we keep our dogs and cats that way. So on the side, between Dr. Pastor and some other folks, including our new fear-free mentality and such, and checking our body condition scores and checking our, what's the thing that you were talking about?
Body fat index.
Thank you. It's something they go to the gym, the BMI. We're going to be working on that, at least informing clients of that, and we'll be talking, especially with this environment coming up, about heat stroke risks for dogs and cats, because I don't think a lot of people know, and hopefully we'll be selling a lot of these to people and explaining them. And understanding that the body fat index or the body condition score is a huge factor in our ability, as we talked about, having the body use convection, having the body use all of our tools. Because you think about the tongue on a dog, or the nares, the turbinates and stuff, trying to move heat off of a body that is obese. How is that ever going to be successful? How are we going to work with that? And it's scary. And we get these dogs that we actually have pictures today. They'll be up on the board. There's 6 most popular breeds for heat stroke because of their conformation. Normally dogs, when we have a normal nose, it has some length to it, and a length of a nose, straight length of a nose, straight length of a mouth, so that the air and the heat can leave and then come in, cooling air, in theory, depending on the disparity of the heat of the dog versus the heat of the environment. Then if we take these dogs and cats and we switch their faces so that the nares, the turbinates, and the distance from exit to lungs is shortened and convoluted, right?
And we squashed all that tissue internally. It's still the same amount of tissue, now it's all squashed in there.
In a little ball, so it's called Turbulent Flow, and it gets hotter and more inflamed in there. And one of our famous dogs, to be perfectly frank with you, all of our smish face dogs, and this is not the best picture, but you guys all can see this. We have a dog that is got a very, very squished little nose. Oh, hold on. The winner,
poster child.
The winner.
The English Bulldog.
English Bulldogs, unfortunately, they have 3 other conformational issues that cause them to not be able to help themselves. They have stenotic nares, so their noses have decreased exit size, and most of the time we'll cut these for these guys. They have defects in the roof of their mouth. We usually cut those out for them, and they have elongated soft palates, which decreases the flow of oxygen back and forth into their trachea. And unfortunately, they have a habit of getting edematous tracheas when they get stressed for any reason. You put some heat in that, you put some inability to move edema or water out of the body, it gets bad so fast, so fast. And for anybody that's ever had a bulldog or a dog with a conformation like this, there are even some veterinarians, myself included when I used to do surgery, who we do not like to intubate these dogs. To throw in a any tracheal tube down these guys, it's a little bit scary because they're conformation. We have to be so careful with what we're doing. But in an instance like heat stroke, especially in a breed like this, getting to the hospital, getting them intubated, getting them oxygen flow to their lungs, because it's a tertiary complication for heat stroke for some of these dogs. And the idea that their body temperature is going to go through their roof and they cannot control it because we can't oxygenate, we can't ventilate, we can't do convection, we can't do all the things we need to do to save ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we have, oh, hold on. It's a pug.
The dreaded overweight pug.
Yeah. The only thing that would make that worse is if this dog was black,
right.
and heating up and using them as and this is a cute little dog here. And then these issues are concerning, and I would hope that veterinarians, including myself in Bark Avenue Animal Hospital, who's getting very serious about the obesity issue, and like I said, Dr. Pastor is using obesity rehab and things like that in education. She's very much into that. We have a secondary issue with these guys, okay? These are in our beast cats. Our beast cats suffer from heat stroke the same way the dogs do, except for cats don't talk to us. Cats don't tell us when they're in distress because they want to hide from us, right? Unless you have like a really, really amazing relationship with your cat. So obesity, and then cats please, 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 cats don't pant, okay?
They're not supposed to pant.
If you ever see a cat that's panting, please take it extremely seriously, okay? Cats can have respiratory issues. They can have lung disease. They can have heartworm disease. They can get valley fever. They can lose their ability to ventilate. They can use their respiratory tract, which is a little bit more stenotic, or meaning closed off, than a lot of dogs, and much more short than a lot of dogs and humans, to try to ventilate. And they will go through the exact same physiological issues that we just kind of talked about with dogs, which was a very brief description, and we'll get to that in posting this amazing article that is coming from the National Institute for Health. It's just cats, right? Cat gets locked in a car. Cat gets transported in a carrier that they can't breathe in, right? Because it's all like, what is it, cotton, and it doesn't have any windows. There's no breathing areas for these guys. They get caught in a shed somewhere. They are left outside without any water resources. They are in a house that doesn't have air conditioning, those types of things.
Or
and
God forbid your air conditioner goes out in the middle of summer and you're at work. I mean, that's the biggest one.
Well, that's been a death trap for so many dogs and cats, including, how many years ago was it with all of our dogs died here in Arizona?
Oh, several years ago there was a boarding facility who was doing not so great practices, and unfortunately their air conditioner went out and they lost a bunch of dogs.
All of them.
And,
They lost them all.
Yeah.
Lost
It
them
was a very, very sad time.
Oh my gosh, it was so, it was just so heartbreaking. And
But the moral of that story is you don't have to go outside to have the heat problem. You know, I would definitely service your air conditioners right before the summer heats up. We have a company that we use here that we strongly recommend. It's Sterling Services. They're amazing. They've got a preventative care plan for your air conditioner, but they've been absolutely instrumental with some of our clients in getting them maintained.
so you refer that company
That's
to
the company
your,
that we recommend.
but the clients, they'll go to their houses and help.
It's a locally owned company just like us, and we really want to support that local company.
It's great, right?
And yeah, we know the owner, and he's fantastic, and that's who we use. Mind you, we have 26 air conditioner units at Bark Avenue.
So we keep them very busy.
Exactly.
There are, in addition to being careful with our cats, being careful with our dogs, if a cat shows you open mouth breathing, if they show you incoordination, if they show you vomiting, if they get that hazed look in their eyes, and meowing is a big one because they're so stressed, they have no idea what's going on. And with the hair coats of cats and the obesity of cats, environments of cats, same as with dogs. I'm not like calling out the cats. They have got to get the emergency hospital. I mean, there's no way around it. And that we can try to cool them off. We try and do this. Cats are markedly more sensitive than dogs in many arenas, especially their liver. When we try to detox the liver, we try and detox kitties and cats, especially because a lot of the environmental and diet that we have them on, trying to keep them from going to kidney failure or liver failure and those types of things, because the conformation of their liver and the ability to detoxify through the liver is very different in cats than it is in dogs. Make no mistake, if your cat even looks as though they might be having heat stroke, and honestly, a cat walks in with the pants, they're on oxygen that fast. I mean, it's not, I don't know who you are, I don't know why you walked in here. If a cat is panting, they're out of their carrier, they are in front of oxygen before we start anything, because over, and how are we going to transport them to a place that's cool? It's very, very important.
The problem with our cats is, I would say, we definitely have an obesity problem in dogs and people, but cats are probably one of the house cat is probably, every house cat is obese, right?
Yeah.
Unless they have some sort of metabolic condition that makes them lose weight,
Which might be even worse, right?
Right? But almost every single cat that walks in our building is overweight.
Yeah, and honestly, I'll be frank with you. If a cat walks in that's not obese, it actually scares me. I'm like, hey, is that cat really skinny? I'm like, we have to do blood work on this cat. Is this cat got parasites? Why is this cat so healthy? Not healthy, but why is it so skinny? And it's my misperception of how we should have a balanced weight, because I've just been doing what I do for a long time, surrounded by these fat chubbies. Like, I'm not sure you guys can see it. Daphne's sitting back there. She's my aged black lab.
Shot at Daphne.
Yeah.
There she goes.
There she is. Hey, Daph, can you stop itching for a second? Hey, Daph.
Daphne.
You're on camera, honey bear.
There you go.
Oh, we go back here. Okay. So Daphne is the poster child of heat stroke. She's a lab. She's black. She is overweight. She's aged. Right now she has no metabolic issues at all. But the important part that people need to know in thinking about heredity, it's not about the heat stroke, it's about the dog. Black labs have their own exercise-induced collapsing that will cause them to go down because of their heredity in addition to the heat stroke. It doesn't mean it's any easier to treat. It doesn't mean it's something that these dogs will have. Australian Shepherds have their own gene, and these are the working dogs. These are the working horses of the dog community, and humans love to hang out with these guys. They love to exercise with these dogs. These dogs want to work. So the exercise and dude, I'm just so excited. These dogs will chase balls until they die, won't they? And the thing
totally will.
Well, and the thing is, I guess sometimes I found humans, clients think that we're exaggerating. Labrador retrievers will chase a ball, and it doesn't mean it's OCD. It just means that they're work-driven dogs. They're usually kept in an environment where they're not given a job. She actually is contraband trained out of Utah, so she's a little bit more confident, more stable with regard to her drive to do things, because she was worked for a long time. Now she's like retired, so she doesn't have that drive. But we talk about that heredity, that breed drive, and the fact that they could have a genetic issue, and having exercise-induced collapse for a heat stroke dog. Okay, you take these guys seriously. You make the phone call. You get them to the hospital.
Yeah. They also are the same type of dog that will eat themselves to death. So they do not have. I don't know if they don't have the mechanism to tell them they're full.
They have the chubby gene.
in my experience, it's always been beagles, dachshunds, Labrador retrievers. They just do not know when they're full, and they will eat and eat and eat until they barf it all back up, and then they'll eat it all.
I got this. I'll clean that up for you. Don't worry about it. So understand that it's not just about our environment. It's not just about the controls. It's not just about what we're going to do when we see a dog that looks like they're under stress or having a heat stroke. Know that there are certain breeds of dogs that have a heritable issue with heat stroke. They're unable to do it. It's like those damn fainting goats. That's not the same issue, but there's no reason that these poor animals need to go down. It's because they have a heritable it's not a defect, it's a gene issue. So we actually can try to test for those things, and I guess it's good to know, but it all comes down to keep these guys protected, keep them in the shade, keep them at a stable weight, right? I'm like the biggest hypocrite you guys are probably ever going to meet. And know they have the facilities in order to get to the emergency hospital, and know that you have doctors that have experience with this. You want to ask, because you have no time. There's absolutely no time whatsoever. You're not waiting in the lobby. You're not waiting in the car. You're calling ahead and you say, my dog's in a heat stroke crisis. And at least here where I worked in Vegas and in my experience in my life, there are no options. A heat stroke dog's coming in or a cat coming in, you whisk them to the back, and you're like, hi, how are you? Give me your dog. and I'm sure you sign something eventually, but there is no time to help these animals. The physiological defects, the organ failure, the brain damage, the blood dyscrasias, abnormalities in the blood, they are irreversible. Many of the damaged organs is irreversible, and a lot of times neurologically. The dogs have an amazing ability to protect their brain from heat proteins, it's amazing, more so than humans and cats in most recent studies coming out of Europe. And so we have information that we can give, and the people that know how to stop heat stroke, I'd ask your veterinarian when next time you go there, next time you call, hey, if my dog's acting weird at all, can I come in? And if it means that you have to go to an emergency facility, find out where it is. Honestly, if we're slammed up and I don't have enough technicians and we can't accurately get you a proper diagnosis, we can be supportive on the way to the hospital, get these guys cool down, get their IV catheters going, get their blood work going, those types of things. But you're looking at 48 hours in many cases to help these guys out. So that being said, there's an organization, it's like looking at San Diego, where everything has to stop, where the plane doesn't. I used to go to plays where they would go, the plane went over, it was in the flight path in San Diego. There's an organization that's called One Health. One Health is an organization that their mandate is to join human health, animal health, and environmental health. They are an amazing organization, and they are very, very informative with regard to most most recently heat stroke issues, and they go at it from a global perspective. They go at it from, this is not politics, please don't turn it into that, global warming. You know, what's going on with global warming? And they had a huge heat flare in Europe not so long ago, I think 2007, where thousands and thousands and thousands of human beings died, and I think it was like 44,000, and half of them was from heat stroke. And the idea that One Health organization, global organization, they sent out a mandate to veterinarians. They said, get ready to see more heat stroke, get ready to prepare these animals for all of the preemptive strikes for heat stroke, both cat and dog, because it's not all those things we were just talking about on the ground, and the obesity and the facial features and the hospitalization. It's possible with global warming, whatever its definition, whatever it is, it's possible that more hot days might be coming. It's possible more dry days. And like I said, One Health, which everyone should look up, and hopefully we'll have it on our
Just
site here.
posted it right in the comments.
They're an amazing organization of outside-the-box thinkers, a bunch of human medicine, a lot of public health for humans and animal organizations, and a lot of environmental thinkers working together. And it's a lovely organization, but they've come up with like mandates and recommendations for veterinary medicine. Get ready, because this is not going away, and it might actually escalate quite a bit. So that being said, I wanted to go over some other things with regard to heat stroke. I want to make sure that everyone sends all their questions and all of their I read it on Google. Please don't do that, okay? I mean, there's a lot of great references out there. It's just that we want to make sure that nobody's led astray with regard to the severity. 50% fatality. What else do we have that we deal with in veterinary medicine, or even in human medicine, or our lives in general, that has 50% fatality rate?
I equate that with parvo. To me, it's parvo.
Actually, we got 90%. We're going 90%.
We've gotten a lot better through the years,
yeah,
but it used to be when I first started, it
Yeah.
was like way more fatal. Then it went 50-50, and we've gotten a lot better understanding the disease. But yeah, I still think of parvo.
Well, the thing is with parvo, with information and education for clients, I'm like, if you got vomiting and diarrhea, unvaccinated puppy, and God forbid you see blood, get them to the hospital right now. I think that education, and then we're still humongous front-end efforts to save these animals' lives.
Yeah.
So if we can get that message out for heat stroke in the way that we got it out for parvo and maybe the obesity issues, and then everybody that owns a dog or cat that looks like this, they need to have some extra effort put into the whole, please help us save your animal's life. And it may sound like it's over the top. It's just that, you only have to treat one or two of these guys in your life to know that it matters. It matters so much. I'm going to bring up some things that I use for heat stroke, and I'm not sure. I'll just stand back there and hopefully we can hear me.
So before you do that, I just want to just kind of summarize. So when your pet is hot, they'll pant. When we're in heat exhaustion, you're going to get more lethargy or panting.
Glaze
They're
eyes,
kind of like telling you to stop and slow down. Once we've gone into that heat stroke, the panting goes away, the lameness becomes more prevalent. How do we know our pet's in heat stroke after heat exhaustion, or they've gone back into the heat zone? They've decreased, or they've gone into the other side?
When they become less responsive, they're down.
Yeah.
They're still panting because they're still probably running 105.7, which is way too hot for them. Non-responsive, vomiting, possibly having seizures, those sorts of, and bleeding.
Yeah.
As soon as there's blood anywhere. If you have any petechiacomosis or bruising, so that's red spots in their eyes, red spots on their gums, bruising on their belly, those types of things, you are way past when you need to be at the animal hospital. That's when we lost auto regulation, we lost splenic control, we lost all those things. So I'm hoping that you never, ever see that, ever, especially in a panting dog or cat that's down.
And remember, hiking with your pet is illegal after it hits triple digits in here in Arizona.
We're there, right? Aren't we?
We're floating between 100 and back down into the 90s this week, but I know we're
Still
going
not
back
safe?
into the hundreds this weekend. So please do not hike with your pets once it hits 100 degrees.
Yeah. I mean, for everybody involved. But we can't. Once they get hot, So if you guys are ever here and you ever see me wandering around here, I always have a sweatshirt on. Always. I mean, regardless of how hot it is, always. I drive back and forth up north. I always have a sweatshirt on, and sweatshirts are nice. They're comfortable. I always wear my sweatshirt, so I am always cognizant of what my dogs are going through in the car. Always. So when we're out here every morning, which I'm every single morning, I'm always wearing a sweatshirt and sweatpants. When I go in, regardless of what I'm doing, in the house, in the car, it doesn't matter, I always have a sweatshirt on. I'm like full gun sweatshirt. It's to remind me of what my dogs are going through every single minute in the car when I'm pseudo not paying attention to them. If I start to sweat, they're not able to. If I start to feel dehydrated, they need water. If I'm starting to feel a little bit faint, those types of things, well, like, I probably shouldn't be driving the car anyway, right? But the idea is that if I even have some sense of what it is that these dogs are going through, plus 4 degrees, it's super. That I do that as part of
Your awareness.
my awareness of my pets, myself, and the idea of asking people to walk around in like Nanook for clothing all the time. Probably not go over very well, but I do it just to
And
make sure.
I know this could be a much larger conversation, but some of these pets have double and triple coats for a reason, and shaving them will actually increase their heat rather than what you would think would be hot for them. Having a very thick coat actually insulates them from the heat, so shaving them down does not actually do anything to cool them down. It actually will heat them up in the hot weather.
It does.
So be careful with that.
It's very difficult to understand because I used to shave the bellies on all my dogs to let them get in the mud and stuff. Also, we live in valley fever land. If valley fever is affecting their respiratory tract, it is much harder to ventilate. If I have heart disease, if I have lung disease, if I have any kind of adrenal diseases, if I have any kind of systemic diseases like diabetes, I cannot ventilate. We have to take the medical concerns into action. That's all I can say is that we have to be proactive about everything. Can we get this is a cool blankie. It goes along with the cool coat that's right there. It's actually like a saddle blanket. If you dip this in water, which we actually brought a bucket, it instantly gets cool and it stays moist. You can kind of, I guess you can kind of bring it out a little bit. It just makes a mess. These things are filled with beads that are instantly cool upon contact with water. You put them down, like Amara said, at the bottom of our chickens. You put them down in your transport of your cats or dogs. You use this in a carrier that's highly ventilated, and also using our relaxation products, whatever we want, pheromone products for dogs and cats to try and keep their anxiety about the heat, the anxiety about the travel, in addition to their ability to be laying on something that will help them ventilate or cool off their own body temperatures and have a choice. You only want to put it through half of their transport kennel or at their house where they live, those types of things, and it works. I can tell you I've traveled all the hell over the country with my dogs, and the biggest thing that saved their lives, and I'll be honest with you, have gallons and gallons and gallons of water in your transport, in your car, in your environment. God forbid something happens. I like Water Rover because you open it, it fills up the drinking portion, or if they don't drink, you tilt it back, it goes into your container. You put it on your belt buckle or wherever it is, you have your backpack, and you can carry 1 or 2 of them. 1 ounce per body weight pound of your dog. As soon as the temperatures go up or they start excessive panting, it goes up to 1.5 to 2 ounces per body weight of dog. So this is 128 ounces. That dog right there, wherever the hell she is, she's a 70, 80 pound dog. She needs a half to 1 whole gallon a day, 1 dog. That's a lot of moving water around, and having the bowls and having this ability to pour this over your dog, to have them put their feet in it. Some people think that you should put alcohol on dogs' feet that's in heat stroke. The answer is no, please don't do that.
Again, that would rapidly cool your pet, which
too
you would
rapidly.
think is the right thing to do, but it's way too rapid, and we don't want to send them into shock.
Also, never do that to a cat. Putting alcohol on the foot of a cat, first of all, it would hurt. It would cool them off too quickly. The first thing cats want to do is be hygienic, and they go whoop, and they lick their paws. Whatever's on their paws goes in their mouth, causes triple problems, right? God forbid they put their alcohol-based foot in their eye. You have all kinds of problems. It's just water, 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 water. So what do you have for us?
There's a really great product called the Cool Collar. We have it here at our store.
Mm-hmm.
This is before you go on strenuous activities out in the heat. So there's an ice cube pouch where it makes pseudo ice cubes. It goes into the collar and then it goes around their neck to prevent the heat exhaustion and heat stroke.
Because all the vascular flow for a dog and humans and cats, jugular veins, and that's probably where you're cooling things off here versus in kind of arterial flow. But the cooling here, as the blood is moving back down to the heart, cool everything off. I've seen these things work remarkably, especially when you're doing like show dogs or competition dogs. No hiking like you said right now, but these things easy peasy, right? And I think you can just put them in the freezer.
You can. There's
and
little sleeves. They're I'm not sure what's in them, if it's water or a certain chemical, but there's and it makes cubes in a sheet. You stick that sheet right into the pouch, and then the collar goes on. I use these for my own dogs when I go hiking, which is not right now, but and then after you've got these are, you can get them at any store. These are just generic ice cube or ice packs.
I usually use those because, like, talk about like all the fruits and the veggies that we have here, and these are traditional Chinese medicine, right? These are cooling foods, and so if you're gonna snack your dog, the dogs and cats that don't feel like eating in the summer, I'm okay with that because they don't feel like eating in the summer. As soon as you get dehydrated, your peristalsis slows down, you end up getting backed up. And so the idea of keeping dogs and cats hydrated, especially cats, is very difficult anyway. But if we use food, canned food, water food, fruit food, those types of things would be great. We can't make immediate changes with these guys. We can slowly offer them things, just like we just did with Jemima. Like, here. And then she seemed to be very happy about it because that was amazing. And she got me. She got me. I can't believe it. I'm going to show you guys one more thing before I leave. And then,
as you do that, I want to talk about life jackets and pets.
Yeah.
Really important when you're on the lake. But the other thing to remember is the sun reflects off the water. So sunburns can happen in dark dogs, black dogs that you won't notice. We have seen excruciating burns in dogs that you won't notice for a week later. They just don't want to be touched. They're just kind of leave me alone, hide away dogs for a little bit, and then all of a sudden you go to pet them and they're all crusty or bloody, and it's because they've actually had second or third degree burns from the sun being black that you haven't noticed. White dogs will get sunburn a lot faster, and you'll actually notice it more. They can get red blotches that last for a long time. Those are sun damage to the skin. So they do make sunscreen for dogs that we do carry at the store. We've got life jackets, but I also wanted to remember, don't forget, if you're on the water, those rays are bouncing off the water and back onto your dog. So they're getting it from the sky and from the ground.
And these are lifesavers, regardless of the sun. If you're going to go out swimming, it's a totally different lecture. These will save a dog's life, 100%.
And they're meant to be cooling inside. And then one other thing that I wanted to talk about was the dog boots. We do this a lot for hiking and dogs, just walking them around the corner. Just remember, not all boots are made the same, and some do not allow breathing of that pet's paws because, like Dr. O said, some of that, the sweat glands or that cooling the convection happens in the paws, and we don't want to stop that. This particular brand that we carry at the store keeps that. It's breathable and they're durable, and so it doesn't allow that an oven to happen where all of that heat is trapped into the paws.
And these guys got angry and I ripped them off because they're overheating.
And we have that bowl with the water bowl. We have collapsible water bowls. We've got a ton of other things to show you, but
back to the holistic side, which I think is probably why some of you people are watching in the first place. So, shameless self-promotion. This is a book, one of the books I wrote, and it's all about holistic medicine on the way to the veterinarian. This is our heat stroke page. It shows some acupressure points to squeeze that actually relieve heat. If you were in my office, I'd be sticking acupuncture needles in those areas. Also, holistic, this fly is killing me here. Homeopathy, which I usually use a company called, it's called Boiron, people call it Boron, but the homeopathic little pellets, and those actually absorb through the gum tissue. They just need contact. These dogs do not need to swallow them, nor do cats, so that even if you get them between their cheek and gum and it absorbs into the dog, that will help them. Now, the ones that we use for heat stroke, it's aconite and it's belladonna. We will print this on the website. We're going to copy these pages. And then the itsy bitsy, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with, if the sun is killing us.
yeah, the sun glare is not so great.
And then in this book, we'll just make copies of these 2 pages. It talks about some of the ideas for heat stroke that we've gone over: frantic pain, panting, anxiety, red tongue, thick saliva, glazed eyes, warm foot pads, vomiting, diarrhea, dizziness, high body temperatures, and bleeding. I think there's just maybe it's one of those things called
Go in
drones.
a circle or something.
There are some images of areas that you can use for acupressure, not acupuncture, on the ring finger of your dog, which point of shoulder, and then governing vessel 14, which is between our shoulder blades. These are things that you can actually squeeze. Triple heater 1 is squeezing the outside of the forward nail beds, the ring finger. It actually is something that we would use for heat stroke and horses. We would throw needles in there, a lot of them. And also if you place cooling ice, something like that on these points, triple heater 1, tip of ear, also extremely helpful. So you're not invading, you're not going full body cold, you're not going shock type treatments, you're not doing alcohol on these guys. You're using acupressure as a tool when you're on your way to the emergency hospital. You also, homeopathics are helpful. They should be non-injurious, and it doesn't require a dog or cat to open its mouth, because we're not going to try and stick our finger in the mouth of a dog or cat that's under a lot of stress. Because what if they bite us? What if they're panicked? What if they start to go into seizure disorder? What if that happens? If you stick something between their cheek and gum that might well dissolve, it might well knock their temperature down, regardless of what you believe in. If it can't hurt them, it just might help. On the way to the emergency hospital, you make sure you tell your surgeon or your staff that you did that. They're considered pretty. They're considered very, very. Without interference with Western medicine. We use them on top of all kinds of other supplementation, and the idea it absorbs through the body. Homeopathics are considered to be, we don't actually understand them, to be honest with you. It's like treats like, and I've seen these products work, and I cannot explain it, why they do that. It's, now it's a boarded specialty in veterinary medicine. So it's got some legitimacy in the veterinary market, as well as holistic markets, as well as the human market. So the idea that this is all available to you is not prescription, because it's on the human side, but the idea that if there's any possibility that these little white sugar-coated pellets being absorbed in your cheek, between the cheek and gum of your dog or cat, might drive their body temperature down while you're on the way to the hospital to help them out further, long term, yeah, I'm okay with that. Pinching the toe of your dog, putting an ice cube in an area, holding at the tip of the ear, because that's where all the capillaries are, right? And the capillaries are what's trying to get the heat out, right? And if we can help them with that in all of our, the heat regulation of the tips of everything. And you felt the tips of your dog's ears, you felt yourself, we did this to see if we're hot. All of those things are legitimate dogs and cats. We just have to make sure that we don't panic and do it too fast, and use tools that in no way will interfere with their possible recovery in the hospital.
Absolutely.
And just remember that heat stroke's real, and a lot of us don't judge it, and a lot of us don't know how to identify it. And please ask your veterinarian, regardless of who they are, and get as many informational pieces as you can. And the obesity, the brachiocephalic dogs and cats, because we have 6 brachiocephalic cats that are being mass sold at this point in time in this country. And just be very, very cautious with these guys, and don't discount it, and don't just stick them in an air-conditioned room and think everything's going to be okay. Especially cats. Cats have to be hydrated, and they have to eat every 48 hours at the very, very maximum time. So if they're sick and they got heat stroke, you don't feel like eating, and they just say, oh, it'll be okay, and it'll be okay in 24 hours, it'll be okay in 48. It's not going to be okay, because you're going to have like tertiary problems. So I appreciate everybody spending your time watching, and know that this is not the normal course that we normally take in heat stroke talks, because we need to go over the science of it, we need to go over the severity of it, and we need to go over the fact that it's not rattle and feather, it is not single species issue, and the fact that we have chosen for our animals and our loved ones to live in a place that runs 108 degrees. We've chosen that. So in order to do that and be responsible for it, we have to know how to take care of our loved ones and actually responsible for them. So these are our choices to put ourselves and our animals in pseudo harm's way, especially the hiking thing and the sunburn thing. So much pain. And the idea of dying of heat stroke, it is a miserable, miserable way to go. Being stuck in a car, being stuck in air conditioning, all the horrible stories that people tell about heat stroke, regardless of whether they're true or not, or dramatized, know that it's true. Know that it's true. So take it very seriously and ask us any questions that you want. Okay? And I appreciate your time. And please tell everybody to watch this, and I don't care where they go, I don't care where they live. Make sure that they know the importance of this for all the livestock that they're responsible for, because it'll happen. It'll happen.
Thank you again, guys. This has been a great week. We'll see you next Thursday, 9 a.m. Feel free to email us your questions at Dr. O'Sullivan at barkatpet.com.
Yep, that's open.
Ron at barkatpet.com. Either one of us will get these questions answered live on this next segment.
Yep.
Until then, we'll see you.